This is the story of Tren de Aragua, a gang so brutal, so methodical, and so global that law enforcement agencies across South America and the United States are still struggling to measure the true extent of their power. Their specialty, everything from extortion and drug trafficking to human trafficking and assassinations. But it didn't start that way. In fact, the origins of Tren de Aragua are almost unbelievable. To understand this gang, you have to understand Tocorón. Imagine a prison so dangerous that even guards are afraid to enter. Now imagine that same prison being controlled entirely by the inmates. By 2007, Tocorón wasn't just a prison. It was a city within a city. It had a nightclub, a swimming pool, a cockfighting ring, a zoo. Prostitutes were brought in regularly. Running it all was a man named Hector Guerrero Flores, a.k.a. Niño Guerrero. He was sentenced for robbery and homicide. But inside, he built a kingdom. And from that kingdom, he founded Tren de Aragua. At first, the gang was small, just a few guys controlling smuggling routes and prison black markets. But Guerrero had a vision. Using phones smuggled into his cell, he gave orders outside the walls. When Venezuela began to collapse economically, millions of citizens fled the country, and Tren de Aragua followed them. Let's jump to 2023, a quiet port city in northern Chile called Iquique. Police raided a storage unit on the outskirts of town, following up on a missing persons report. What they found inside would haunt even the most hardened officers. 3 young women, tortured, killed, dumped like garbage. Maria, Camila, Laura, from Venezuela, Chile, and Peru. All 3 had disappeared weeks earlier. All 3 had been lured with job offers, promises of safety, and all 3 had connections to Tren de Aragua recruiters. Autopsies revealed systematic torture, captivity, abuse. Their deaths weren't just murders, they were warnings. This was part of a larger pattern. One Chilean official described it as the most sophisticated human trafficking operation the country had ever seen. Public outrage exploded. Mass protests filled city streets, and a nationwide manhunt began, leading to over 60 arrests tied to Tren de Aragua cells operating in Chile. In February 2024, Chile was rocked again. Ronald Ojeda, a former lieutenant in the Venezuelan army and outspoken critic of the Maduro regime, had been granted political asylum in Santiago. But on a cold, quiet morning, masked men dressed as Chilean police stormed his apartment. They forced Ojeda into an unmarked vehicle. 10 days later, his body was found beneath a concrete slab, bound, tortured, murdered. The operation was surgical, precise, and the suspects had ties not only to Tren de Aragua, but possibly to Venezuelan intelligence itself. State-sanctioned assassination, executed by gangsters. A horrifying alliance. Back in Peru, a woman named Camila came forward with a story that stunned the nation. She had been promised a job in Lima. What she found instead was a brothel hidden beneath a popular club. The brothel, hidden beneath the bustling streets of Lima, operated with calculated precision. Women were confined to cramped, dimly lit rooms, monitored constantly, and forced to meet nightly quotas under the threat of violence. To ensure compliance, The perpetrators wielded psychological torment, showing victims videos of their families back home, insinuating that any disobedience would result in harm to their loved ones. Her captors showed her videos of her family back in Venezuela, threatened to hurt them if she resisted. After enduring months of captivity, Camilla seized a fleeting opportunity to escape. Navigating through the labyrinthine corridors of the brothel, she reached the surface, ran barefoot to a police station, and sought refuge with local authorities. Her testimony provided a rare glimpse into the inner workings of the trafficking ring, detailing the methods of recruitment, control, and exploitation employed by the criminals. Her testimony triggered a nationwide crackdown. Dozens of women were freed, several gang members arrested. The brothel? It was operated by Tren de Aragua. By 2022, the gang had made its way to the United States. In Yuma, Arizona, Border Patrol agents raided what they thought was a migrant safe house. What they found instead were 7 bodies. Venezuelan nationals, shot execution style, a message scrawled on the wall in blood: "Los que fallan mueren," those who fail, die. In Queens and the Bronx, Tren de Aragua began targeting small businesses. A man would walk in, hand over a folded napkin, and walk out. Inside, a phone number, a deadline. Pay the protection fee or your business burns. 13 arsons followed in 6 months. In October 2024, a 15-year-old girl was rescued from a sex trafficking operation in New York City. The suspect, 27-year-old Enyerbert Blanco, a Venezuelan national, had previously been released without bail on an attempted murder charge. Authorities believe Blanco is affiliated with the Tren de Aragua gang, a transnational criminal organization originating from Venezuela. Blanco's criminal history includes illegal entry into the U.S. in May 2023, an attempted murder charge in the Bronx, and a drug-related arrest in Miami. Despite these charges, he was repeatedly released from custody. The case has raised concerns about the presence of Tren de Aragua members in the U.S. and their involvement in human trafficking. Law enforcement agencies are now focusing on dismantling the gang's operations and preventing further exploitation of vulnerable individuals. In November 2024, the gang's violence struck again in Farmers Branch, Texas. 33-year-old Nilzuli Arno Petit was found dead in her home. 3 Venezuelan men were arrested days later, all linked to Tren de Aragua. All had crossed the border illegally. They were part of a broader criminal cell, trafficking drugs, fake documents, and humans. In March 2025, a significant blow was dealt to the international drug trade when several members of the Tren de Aragua gang were arrested on federal charges related to a vast narcotics distribution network. These arrests highlighted the gang's extensive involvement in trafficking drugs across borders, exacerbating the drug crisis in multiple countries. The operation, led by the U.S. Department of Justice, targeted key figures within the Tren de Aragua organization. These individuals were responsible for orchestrating the shipment and distribution of large quantities of illegal narcotics, including cocaine and methamphetamine, throughout the Americas. The gang's sophisticated logistics and communication networks enabled them to move drugs efficiently, often evading law enforcement detection. Investigations revealed that the Tren de Aragua had established strong ties with other criminal organizations, facilitating the exchange of drugs, weapons, and personnel. Their operations extended beyond Venezuela, with significant activities reported in countries such as Colombia, Peru, and the United States. In the U.S., the gang's presence was notably felt in states like Texas and Florida, where they contributed to the surge in drug-related crimes and overdoses. So how did they get here? The answer lies in Title 42. During the Trump administration, hundreds of Venezuelan nationals were expelled from the U.S. without proper vetting. But Venezuela refused to take most of them back. So, U.S. authorities released them into cities across the country. Some were criminals, others were suspected gang members, and they disappeared. Tren de Aragua found them, recruited them, rebuilt their networks. Critics say we scattered cartel operatives across the U.S. Supporters say the border needed to be secured. But now the consequences are unfolding in real time. The gang is now active in at least 7 U.S. states. Task forces are scrambling. RICO cases are in motion. But the truth is, they're already embedded. This isn't just Venezuela's problem anymore. As the bodies piled up and investigations deepened, the presence of Tren de Aragua in the United States evolved from a rumor into a documented threat. By early 2025, law enforcement officials across at least 7 U.S. states had opened active cases against suspected affiliates. Joint task forces were formed. Intelligence agencies began linking seemingly unrelated crimes in Florida, Texas, New York, and Arizona back to the same organization. But with that rising awareness came rising political tension. The story of Tren de Aragua became a lightning rod for debate in Washington. On one side, critics of the Trump-era immigration policies, particularly Title 42, argued that the system was short-sighted, reactive, and unprepared for the long-term consequences. By prioritizing speed over scrutiny, they claimed, the U.S. had created a pipeline for dangerous individuals to disappear into its communities. Others pointed fingers at the Biden administration. They claimed that enforcement had slackened, that ICE was overwhelmed, and that criminal migrants were being released without proper monitoring. To them, the rise of Tren de Aragua wasn't just a policy failure. It was the result of political negligence. Still others said the issue transcended party lines, that this wasn't about right or left. It was about a broken immigration system that had been stretched beyond its limits. Caught in the middle were the victims, business owners being extorted in silence, families of trafficking victims, mothers in shelters who had fled violence in Caracas, only to encounter the same fear on American soil. And beneath all the headlines, press conferences, and political grandstanding, the cartel continued to grow. Their tactics were evolving, their operations diversifying. Fake rental applications, cryptocurrency laundering, encrypted messaging groups for recruitment. They weren't just surviving in America, they were adapting to it. We often think of cartels as distant threats, something happening in Mexico, something foreign, something over there. But the story of Tren de Aragua shatters that illusion. They were born inside a Venezuelan prison, raised through fear, forged in corruption, and spread by desperation. They exploited every crack in every system they encountered, from border patrol weaknesses to the chaos of international diplomacy to the bureaucracy of American immigration. They didn't sneak into the U.S. They walked through a door that no one was watching. And now they are in the cities, the neighborhoods, the shelters, the systems. They are trafficking minors, burning businesses, burying bodies beneath the soil. And if we do not pay attention, if we do not connect the dots, if governments don't take this seriously, the harder it will become to stop them. If you found this story eye-opening, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dive documentaries that expose the hidden forces shaping our world. What do you think? Did U.S. policy create this monster by mistake? Or are we just now waking up to a threat that's been growing in plain sight? Let us know in the comments. And as always, stay informed, stay safe,